So, I mean, like if you were to go Sydney to Perth, you're talking days.
5 days.
Like if you were to drive.
5 days if you were to drive, and it's mostly
Yeah.
and you'd be driving through mostly desert.
Yeah, because I think if you were to look at Australia and the United States on a map, it basically you're all like they're relatively similar in width, if you will. So to go from like say San Diego to New York would be about the same. You could probably make it there in 4 days, but 5 would be more
But
accurate.
it's funny because if you went from New York, if you drove from New York to LA, how many states would you go through?
Oh, I've done that drive, man.
How many states would you drive through?
I'm trying to think how many we did. Well, when I drove, excuse me, cross country with my college roommates after we all graduated, and we ended up doing 37 states in 25 days. And we basically we lived in Santa Barbara at the time, so we went from Santa Barbara um, down south through Arizona to see the Grand Canyon. Then we went through New Mexico and Texas. So basically, we traversed the whole southern area of the United States down to Florida.
Yep.
And then we went north all the way from Florida to Maine, and then we kind of came back. But yeah, we did 37 states in 25 days. But you could, I mean, it depends on the route you take. Like if you went north,
if you went to just drive straight from New York to LA, you'd hit about 10 states, maybe.
I would say, yeah, a minimum of 10. It's probably no, maybe you're accurate. Well, you keep talking, and I'll pull up a map of the United States.
If you went from Sydney to Perth, you'd only hit maybe a maximum of maybe maximum of 3 states.
Well, you guys, I forgot you even had states. Don't you only have like a half a dozen states?
So you've got Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, which is the little island below.
Yeah, yep.
South Australia and Western Australia, and then there's 2 territories, which is Northern Territory and ACT, which is the Australian Capital Territory, which sits in New South Wales, but it's halfway between Sydney and Melbourne. Because when they were deciding about a capital in Australia, Sydney and Melbourne both wanted to be the capital of Australia, and they argued over it. So they ended up deciding, we'll just create a whole new territory, put it there, and that can be and that's Canberra. So
they argued over it. They didn't like put emus in a ring or kangaroos or some shit and have them duke it out.
It would have been so much better, but now they just decided, let's fucking.
By the way, I want proper credit for saying emu and not emu, which is, in my opinion, how it should be said. Emu.
Say Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Yeah. See, most Americans when they say it, they call it Melbourne.
I would maybe not. I don't know if I would say that if I didn't know that it's pronounced Melbourne. I would probably. Most people here would say Melbourne. Melbourne.
And same with Brisbane.
Brisbane, yes, Brisbane. I mean, it's really no different than hearing like a quintessential white person try to talk Spanish. You know, like "Hola, cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias." You know what I mean? It's ridiculous when you listen to it. To answer your question, you hit the fucking nail right on the head, dude. The straightest route. I mean, I don't know if there's a highway that runs necessarily that straight, but from Los Angeles to New York, if you were to go straight, you would hit almost exactly 10 states.
And how long they reckon would it take?
From LA to New York, I'm guessing probably 4 days. I mean, probably most realistically 5, but it depends on how much driving you want to do each day. Let's see. I could tell you exactly how many miles it is.
For all you non-Americans out there that want to take this trip, Bradley's about to be his own little trip advisor and let you know.
Exactly. New York. New York is not doing that well right now, just in general. It's 2,800 miles and it's 41 hours. So if you drove straight there, you could make it there in like a day and a half.
Oh yeah. So about it's considerably less if you went from Sydney to Perth. It's about 4.5 days
Yeah, I just know that your country and our country are relatively similar in size. I know that you guys are taller, if you will, but width is about the same.
Are we talking about islands or dick size?
Penis, of course.
Fair enough. Everything goes back to penis. Well, mate,
always.
let's have a discussion. What I wanted to get you on, because you're from California. Am I right there?
This is correct.
Yeah,
you are accurate. I've actually never really lived anywhere other than Southern California.
Done my research.
Yeah.
And you grew up loving punk or pop punk. In that kind of genre, like Blink-182, Sum 41, Alkaline Trio.
Do you want to hear the real, like the further backstory?
Go.
As far as music, I don't think I've talked about this, but before I was actually introduced to metal was what I found first. And then it was kind of punk rock from that point. But before that, like when I was a kid, I listened to shit like Tiffany and Debbie Gibson and New Kids on the Block.
All the good shit.
And Pet Shop Boys, In Excess, Two Live Crew.
Oh, before you go any further, Go West by the Pet Shop Boys has to be still one of the best songs ever made.
Yeah, you know what? I can't argue that. You're right. That's a phenomenal song. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then, it was either my friend Brett or my friend Aaron, someone who I was good friends with when I was, in my formative years, like right when I was starting high school. One of those dudes played me. Pantera was actually like the first real band that I was into that had a guitar and, could be considered rock of some sort. And then my other buddy, Brett, he introduced me to Pennywise. And that was the first. And then, actually, you know what? I take that back. I don't remember which came first, Pennywise or NoFX, because I was in high school and I was listening to both of those bands. And I remember NoFX, Punk in Drublic was like the album I had on repeat. So it was either Pennywise, Unknown Road, or NoFX, Punk in Drublic. I don't remember specifically which one came first, but it was those two.
My dad was a DJ. I'll be explaining this on the show, but my first kind of music was Deep Purple. Like heavy,
really?
Yeah, like the heavy Deep Purple.
Rock, yeah.
That's what got me into like punk. But my first two punk bands that I ever listened to and fell in love with, three. One's an Australian band which I think you would absolutely love if you have not already heard them, called Frenzal Romp.
It's so fun, and whenever anyone mentions like Australia and punk rock in the same breath, I immediately go to Frenzal Romp. Yes, obviously I've lived and listened to and loved countless bands on Fat Records, but I discovered them, I'm sure like a lot of people did back in the day, which was on the Fat Records comps, the compilation albums. And yeah, Frenzal Romp is great.
Their album, Not So Tough Now, was amazing. But then with them, I found NoFX.
Yep.
With Pump Up the Volume.
Yep.
Punk in Drublic. But then probably the band which I kind of fell in love with more was Lagwagon. Yeah,
I've been to. I love Lagwagon. I've been into those guys. Probably almost as long because as you did and you just said, once you start getting into bands on a label, especially a label like Fat, like you discover all of these other, and Fat Mike, obviously he did a great job of signing bands that were all relatively similar, So it's like if you like one Fat band, you inevitably probably have another 10, 12 bands on that label on Fat Records that you like or love.
I used to love the joke that Lagwagon used to say about themselves, that all their music is the disregarded music that Fat Mike had for NoFX.
That's funny.
If it was a NoFX song they didn't like, they just give it to Lagwagon.
I love it. I have not heard that, but that's great. Did you ever watch the what the fuck? I own the movie. I have the DVD. It's the Story of Fat Records. I can't remember what the name of it is.
No, I haven't, but I am going to now.
If you're a Lagwagon fan, because Lagwagon's pretty prominent in that movie because they were around. They were one of the first bands Fat Mike signed. Them and Propagandhi. But
another great band,
Propagandhi. Yeah, absolutely. You like the that documentary, the movie? You'll dig it. I would definitely highly recommend you check it out.
So I love all the documentaries or biography or the movies that these bands make. I mean, I think early on, being a Blink-182 fan, watching their first movie they made was Urethra Chronicles.
I never saw it, but I heard of it. Yeah, I never saw it.
It was really funny. It was brilliant, and it just instilled you why you're a Blink-182 fan. But yeah,
I mean, yeah, like dick jokes and butt jokes and anal sex. Yeah. It's kind of like the musical version of Tasteless Gentlemen.
Exactly. But like watching that and then watching their second one, Urethra Chronicles 2, like they said some things in Urethra Chronicles, and then you look back at it, and you like look at what's happened now with the band, and you're like, yeah, man, if you only knew, like they're like, oh, we're gonna be here forever. We're gonna be like, you'll be wiping your ass with our like album covers, like that's how long we're going to be here for. And then you're like, oh man, if you only knew what what was happening. I mean, don't get me wrong, Blink-182 is still amazing with Matt coming to the band, but I still don't think they're the same without.
Dude, you're a nicer person than I am. I don't dislike the new Blink, if you will, but I feel like they're just trying so hard with Matt.
I feel Matt and Mark sound too much like each other.
They do. Well, that was the good thing about Tom and Mark is that they were so contrasting in terms of like their vocal stylings, like completely, and it really it worked. I mean, I don't know how or why, but it just worked.
Yeah.
And Matt, dude, I love Matt Skiba. Love Matt Skiba. I love him in Alkaline Trio. I love Mark and Travis in Blink, but together it's not bad. It's just not Blink. What Blink once was, what they used to be. It's just not.
Like with the first song they brought out, on the top of my head, I can't remember. Bored to Death.
I liked that song. I did like that song.
Listen to the song and you close your eyes and you don't, like, even if you don't, like, that's probably wrong. If you listen to the song and not really pay attention to it, you almost think that Mark sings that whole song by himself.
Yeah.
Because they sound so much each other. And when it's Mark first and then Matt Skiba sings the second verse and you're like, oh wow, that is Matt. It's not Mark singing it. And you think voices are so similar. You're like, oh fuck. But I mean, I still think like I love Blink-182's early stuff, and that's what I love, like, Dude Ranch, Cheshire Cat, and State of Enema of the State. But I think when they broke up, or they took that 4-year hiatus, and they came back with that Blink-182 album that was very, very strongly influenced by The Cure.
Was that Dogs Eating Dogs, that sort of obscure album?
No, this was the one that they came back and it had that was the one where Miss You was on, Miss You, all that.
I'm listening. I'm just gonna look up the discography for Blink real quick.
They it was so influenced by The Cure. I think the lead singer there, Robert Smith, was actually even on a track. He actually sung a track with Tom. But the writing styles of how that album came to be, where if I was listening to how they writ that album, and pretty much half the songs how they were written was Mark went off into one room, Tom went off in another.
Yeah.
And they both wrote completely different songs, come back. But the mood of the songs they wrote were like the exact same.
That's funny. That's funny when you think about it.
Deal with me, people in the podcast. I'm sorry. I'm just going to bring this up, but I just wanted to bring up the song that that they did.
Dude, what was the name? I'm looking at the Blink, all of Blink's albums right now.
It's the self-titled album. It's the one with the
in 2003.
Yeah, the smiley face with
Yeah,
the smiley face with
I mean, honestly, like that for me, that band will always hold a special place in my heart.